Hi, we're going to start this week's lecture sitting down, talking about walking, and I hope the online format is going well for you, and that these lectures are informative a little bit. I like to shoot them outside. Hey, if we're going to be online, let's use the whole world as our classroom, I would say. A river of time has been a metaphor for thousands and thousands of years, and the river kind of flows constantly to infinity. It's kind of endless, and animation can be that way sometimes when we're sitting there drawing frame after frame after frame. But another fitting metaphor during this season of autumn is the cycle. And this week we're going to look at the cycle. And animation is one of those disciplines where we try to look at ways to kind of make things easier. And a cycle, meaning cycling through drawings, repeating drawings over and over again, is one of those techniques. It's not easy though, because even though you minimize the number of drawings you're going to make, you're actually increasing the likelihood that you'll spot mistakes. So a cycle needs to be very smooth and free of mistakes, so it's a lot trickier than you might think. So, first, what is wrong with this picture? Can you pick it out? Why doesn't this work for walking? And if you ever want to freak someone out, or people out, just walk down the street going like this. The problem there is that people don't walk that way. We have a natural way to counterbalance our weight, so if my right foot is forward, my right arm is back and my left arm is forward. And this gives our body balance. And this is the number one mistake usually when animating a walk, is not keeping track of that balance, that counterbalance of left-right movement. Also, notice that there's arcs in this walk. My head defines a series of arcs. And that's something we also want to look for. We have periods of time when we're walking and absorbing that walk closer to the ground, and as we lift up, we're a little bit higher. So there is this series of arcs. If you imagine a spot at the top of my head, it's defining a series of arcs. When we're animating the walk cycle, we want to think about these positions as keyframes. So we'll have one keyframe, and then the opposite side, which would be another keyframe. And then we have what are called crossover drawings. So if this is where I start, this leg would be midway, and then that might be the crossover position. And then this foot would be down, and we'd go to that position, and then again, just the opposite. Crossover, again, my head is higher off the ground here, and as it steps down, it will be planting. Okay, today we're going to look at the idea of walk cycles in animation. As we've talked about, a regular animation begins with drawing number one, and it goes on to pretty much infinity, of course. And we have a number of keyframes we could put in there as well, maybe drawing number 9, then we'd find drawing number 5, which is called a breakdown, and then maybe 3, and then maybe 7, and then we'd find the in-betweens that go in between there. And so we can do a walk cycle in relatively few frames using the pose-to-pose method. But if we wanted a character to walk for a long way, we would have to make a lot of drawings. So if we wanted 10 seconds of walking, we might theoretically have 240 drawings to make. And that's a lot of work and a lot of time. And one thing about animation is that we do want to try to find shortcuts. And one important shortcut is the use of cycles. Now in a cycle, we take this idea and we just make drawings that repeat into themselves. So we want to create a sequence of drawings that work smoothly and that can be repeated over and over again. So rather than doing a linear timeline of drawings, we might set up a cycle, something like this. We'll start with drawing number 1, and then we'll create a cycle of drawings that circle back into itself. So number 1 would be the beginning keyframe, number 5 would be another keyframe, then we'd find breakdown number 3, number 7, and then we could find number 2, 4, 6, 8. And so that drawing number 9 really is the same as drawing number 1, but it's got to be very smooth and seamless. And what we can do then is create a character that walks in place that can be repeated back into itself over and over. So with this kind of timing, we can then begin to break down some of the keyframes. Let me just grab a different color here. Okay. So we looked at some of the ideas of keyframed in the live portion of the lecture. I'm just going to draw the feet here for a minute. So if we consider frame 1, the keyframe over here, we have legs on the ground, and I'm just going to shade this back leg so we can just keep that in mind. And so that's drawing number 1, and it will also be drawing number 9. And then the second pose is pretty much exactly the same thing, except we have the opposite going on in terms of forward leg and backward leg. Now this is very easy to be confused, so we want to be very careful with that. Then we're going to find what are the crossover positions. Now another thing to bear in mind is that we're going to keep this character walking in place, and so a center point is a good point of reference. So we want this leg to slide back and in relation to that center point. So here, if my center point is there, I'll put one here for 7 as well, and we have this crossover position. So this far leg, the shaded leg, will be the one that's on the ground, and the forward leg will be the one passing over or crossing over. And I know that's a little off, that should be a little forward there. And then here, similarly, but the opposite way, we're going to find that breakdown drawing this way. So we have that leg, and then we have this crossover position, kind of goes behind it. And then it's a matter of figuring out what is the drawing that best encapsulates the in-between position from here to here. So this would be drawing number 2, would be an in-between, and it would be somewhere between here. So something like we have that far leg again, and this one's about to come off the ground, maybe. And I'll shade that. And it's very easy to get these fore legs and back legs confused, so that's why we want to shade them in. And again, that's in relation to the center over there. And then the idea is to figure out what all these other drawings would be. And that's going to be your job, is to figure out how to get the legs rotating back into themselves, if you will. So we're going to have a character that just kind of walks in place, right? And it's got to be very smooth, because if there's any mistakes, then we're going to have some issues that are going to spot, because the cycle is going to repeat over and over and over. So whether you do it digitally or on paper, the idea is the same. Here we're going to have one frame, and I'm just going to do the legs here because you guys get to do the homework. Right, so we have drawing number 1, and I think it's also good to always number your drawings. I always like to number my drawings for a client. That way, if one's out, we can freeze frame and isolate it. So drawing number 1, and I'll shade that in, if you will. It's the far leg, and again, this is all going to be in relation to that center point. It's sort of an imaginary point. You could put it in as a different layer computer-wise. So then what you can do is then take drawing number 1, and on a computer you can onion skin it, but here I'm just going to pop it underneath, and I can kind of see underneath a little bit, and I'm going to find that drawing number 5, or I'll try number 3 first. Well, number 5 actually, sorry, to be confusing, would be the opposite of that, right? So we would just have this leg pop down, and this leg would be the further one. And I'm going very quickly. You guys will do a nice job making nicer drawings, but numbering those drawings is really important. And again, here's my center position. So if I flip these two drawings, you can see they're just the opposite. And now I'm going to go ahead and find drawing number 3. So I'll just place these together. And this is where a peg bar, we'll talk about peg bars and registration devices if we're drawing. But here, drawing number 1 has this shaded leg is the leg that's on the ground. So here I'm going to mark that area by having this one on the ground, and then we're going to create that, what's called that crossover position. And again, I'm just working very roughly. I think you'll be a little more careful than I am. So we've got this is drawing number 3. Again, those numbers are very important. And then if I put this in the right sequence, 1, 3, 5, let me just get these in order here, and I will grab these 3 pages and I'll flip them apart, and you can begin to see, and I'm beginning to get this idea of walking. Now I'm going to have to make some in-betweens for sure. So then I will put number 5 aside, and then I would just find basically drawing number 2, new sheet of paper. Unfortunately, as animators, or as paper animators, we have been responsible for probably whole species being wiped out. I'm not proud of that, but it does take some paper. And then we'll just sort of determine what this position is going to be next. So sometimes you just rough it in. And again, when you do rough animation, you're not so worried about beautiful drawings. We're trying to get movement here, not pretty drawings. And I think that throws a lot of people, because you say, well, that drawing might not look so great, and you'd be right. But the idea here is to just get the movement first, and then we can go back over and clean up the drawings, what are called cleanups. So here now, I'll just flip these drawings. And you can see a couple of things. You know, if you work quickly, it's nice because you can quickly get through things. I can see that my proportions are a little off and so on. The legs are getting smaller, but then we get the motion is right. So then I can just go ahead and, you know, make some corrections, make this a little bit bigger, make some notes and so on, because later on we can clean that up. The idea is to work through with speed and get the motion right. Because if I spend a lot of time drawing a lot of details, right, if I get all the pants going, if, you know, whatever, and I spend time drawing little socks and maybe a shoe, right, or a sneaker or whatever it is, if I spend that time and I shade and I put all the little detailed shoelaces in and everything, the problem here is that if it doesn't animate well, then I've wasted all that time. So if you notice that I would rather make mistakes in proportion, get the movement right, and then begin to clean it up later, fix it up a little bit later. And I think that is something that throws a lot of beginning animators. So then you get it from here. I've got 1, 2, and 3. Beginning to get that leg to step over. Then I could get from there, I'll put number 3 aside and number 2 aside, and now I need to get drawing number 4. So I'll just put these 2 drawings together, or if I'm on the computer, I'll just onion skin. And again, you can, I don't know if you can see that, but on my table, or if I'm using a light box, I could certainly see that a little bit better. And again, trying to keep better proportions. And okay, just really loose. I'm going very quickly here. This would be number 4, and that's really important too. And so we'll put this whole sequence together now. I've got, whoops, oh, there go my crayons. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Stick all these together. And try to get as even as I can. Now I'll try to get as many as I can in my hands here. Let's see if we can see this step. And I can just begin to flip it and test it right on my desk here. I could scan these, photograph them, whatever, or just draw it directly on the computer. So that's the idea. We're looking at a cycle of drawings, again, that goes from 1 back into itself. 1 would be the same as 9. We've got number 5, which we showed you, number 3, number 7, and then we can find these breakdowns and so on going through there. And if we find that it's moving too quickly, we could again make more drawings to slow it down. That's how we would do that. Alrighty, hopefully that explained a little bit about how to do a walk cycle. All right, so there it is. I've just shown you some of the mechanics of a walk cycle. Remember, there's acting too. And a character is going to move differently. It's going to have different timing, different motivations, depending on how you want to portray it from an acting standpoint of view. So for this assignment, just get the mechanics down. I'm going to ask you to create your own character. I'm going to give you some parameters within the size or in a box that it's going to go in that you'll see on canvas. And I want you to get it moving very cleanly and smoothly so that it can cycle through a number of times. And it's a lot trickier than it seems because, as I've mentioned, if there are any mistakes, because it loops, you're going to see that rhythm of that mistake. So you want to get it very smooth before submitting it. And it's a lot of fun. These first assignments, the bouncing ball, the walk cycle, are setting us up for longer projects. So try to do a good job with these. Have fun with it. It's a lot of fun once you see it moving well. And we'll see you next time.